Thursday, March 13th at 6:02, and I call this meeting to order. Gavel. Woo-hoo. Want me to dive in? Okay. If you can come back, bear with me 3 or 4 minutes at the stage, and we'll go in, which is grateful for the window of time. Actually, I only felt we needed 15 minutes, but in talking to others, it was like, well, let's put a little bit of cushion there. And primarily what I wanted to do is affirm the processes and protocols, and whether or not there are any additional processes or protocols we should explore, set in motion, or have ready in the wings, tied to the rapidly changing national landscape as it pertains to education. And I want to be really clear, in my estimation, the meeting's not about the content of that which is transpiring, so about any particular executive order or potential one, but our response protocols as a board. In light of the rapidly changing sociopolitical landscape, we've had to respond to and prepare for significant shifts in actions potentially and or directly impacting our district. The response to date, in my estimation, has been thoughtful, grounded, strong, and strategic. And I feel lucky to be both within this state in which our elected officials are strategically working to protect the success of our schools and the safety and welfare of our children and educators, and within this district, a place in which I witness leadership willing to stand up for our community and core commitments. I felt it was important to meet and affirm the response practices and protocols as the unfolding practices have been established in real time, and only, believe it or not, over the past 7.5 weeks. And many of you might feel these practices have been effective. I don't disagree. I also felt it was wise to check in and make sure we're all operating with the same understanding. I know we've each had conversations, but we've not had a collective sit-down conversation about this as a board. And so I think sometimes, for me, I assume everyone's operating with the same parameters, and then in conversation find out maybe not. And just a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, in the Slager update, that one of the updates you shared from WASDA and OSPI, and this was just 2 weeks ago, it said from them, quote, during the next 90 days, starting 2 weeks ago, there will likely be legal challenges, additional details, and more questions that arise, leading to potential changes and new developments. As a result, it's crucial to take measured and deliberate, it is crucial to take a measured and deliberate approach when determining your next steps. Let's see, the fact that the landscape is volatile and will likely remain volatile means that we can expect moments of calm and moments of active distress, and I want to trust our flow of information and our practices. As I said before, I feel we're lucky to live where we are. I know individuals living with districts that are aligned with the unfolding executive orders, etc., or the state is aligned with those executive orders. Those districts have felt in real distress talking to people there. And this firewall that we have right now with, you know, our state superintendent of education and OSPI and WASDA and our attorney general, that firewall has given us a buffer, and my hope is that buffer and firewall will stand. But right now we have a window in which we can look at what's coming our way and a little bit of time to be proactive. And so what I saw us doing was really quickly reviewing what the current practices are in regard to staying informed, proactively addressing and being poised to respond if a time-sensitive decision must be made, reviewing really quickly identified areas of potential vulnerability, and then finally exploring new, additional, or complementary pathways and practices. So are there other responses that we should consider and or other sites of responsibility that we should be looking at? And so taking kind of current practices first, I want to see where this aligns with y'all's thinking, if there's parts I'm missing. I mean, I see a couple of key pieces, which is the weekly briefing, And in the biweekly, where Slate is sharing national, state laws, regulations, and policy updates, with a commitment to send a separate email if a biweekly isn't scheduled, if there's something unfolding. The folder that I think, Juniper, you set up with OSPI updates, the OSPI statewide webinars, the updates directly through Parent Square, which I've appreciated. And I don't know, and so I could kind of go on, if there are other practices that you all see that have already rooted and are providing guidance for our response and being responsible in the current moment. I think that's kind of question one.
So the question is, are we currently, is there something else to add to this list of what's currently being done?
And I have thoughts on that, but first it was just, are there other current practices to get them on the table first?
That's what I'm saying,
Yes.
yeah, that is currently being done, that we haven't put on the table.
Right.
Not to my knowledge.
No, not to mine either.
I'm not sure, I think Jess, you were on the webinar, were either of you able to be on the webinar yesterday?
I tutor every time those webinars are, that Tuesday is just
Yeah.
flat out for me, I can't make it.
It was again, I'd be curious to hear your reflection, it was, and yours, Jess, it felt like it was, I was like, my nervous system was calmer going into that meeting, but it felt like there was more to share on his end, which I thought, I'm just trying to pay attention and not be in those meetings like, what's gonna happen now?
Right.
I think part of it is because now, having been to 2 of them, I just feel, I find him to be a steady, sure-footed leader. And so I trust what's coming from him. I did think it was interesting to hear, maybe this is old news to everybody, about the USDA purchasing grant around fresh local food. So that's a thing where someone might go, oh, that's not Department of Education, but there's gonna be other places where we are maybe gonna take hits that aren't as obviously tied to the DOE. I don't know if that was money that Sierra was banking on, I assume so.
Yes.
There are other, and I thought that was something he had brought up in the first one that I attended, was there may be money out there, especially if you're going after grants, that may not be as obviously tenuous or not to be counted upon, because they may not have it may be a dotted line, not a dotted line to your school the way that you think. It's just, you have to be watching all the lines.
That's a very good point. I was talking to Sierra yesterday, and she was saying, that the $30,000 grant isn't there anymore. And that's a shame, because it reflects our values of bringing fresh, good food to the students, and we, have lost that funding.
And I think that's why there was that extra push this week as well to fill out the free and reduced lunch forms, because from my understanding, that would help a bit if we could get a few more of those.
That was related to another,
It's a different fund.
yeah, well, not another fund, but another, it's on policy shift. In order to qualify for school-wide free lunch and free breakfast, you have to meet this threshold. And so with the current enrollment projections, we wouldn't meet, we met it this year, but currently what we have in our free and reduced lunch, percentage-wise, we're about 1.5% to 2% lower than the threshold that you need. So they want to make another push because we have until April 1st to change that number and then appeal
So
back.
the threshold hasn't changed, it's our data that's changed.
Right, yeah.
And that is a state threshold, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's not necessarily going to be changed at all. Yeah.
Well, and that's, partly one of the things I've on here in terms of consideration are some of these things that on the surface, someone might not immediately connect to education and to ramifications in their district, and yet have profound ramifications. And in my estimation, that there are things that we can do to position us to mediate some of those effects, which is my hope.
Like,
Can say
can
more.
you, can you say what you mean by that?
Yes, well, okay, so, let me ask one question first, and I'll say what I mean by that. Are there other kind of practices we're doing to stay informed as a board right now that I don't have there, or are we?
The only thing that I have not done, because the session isn't over, but I did send you all that weekly standard, which actually makes a lot more sense sometimes than the stuff that we get from the legislature. We haven't talked about what's passing in the state legislature, partly because we've been busy, frankly, because we're such a small board anyway, that our voice, while I've been sending out, weekly stuff as your representative to the legislature. It's what we say and what we do. I think we should focus on our local economic issues because frankly, we don't have the clout that other districts do to weigh in on state law. But one thing that I would like to do is to insert, and this is a placeholder for me more than anything else, information as it comes across as to what state laws have been passed. I see no point really taking a lot of time about ones that haven't, because it's too bad, but that's not what we have to work with. So it's incumbent on me to probably do more reporting. What do you think, Slade?
It's difficult in this period of time when we're seeing those cutoffs. And so, you were talking about like this kind of wave of information and how do you parse it out. It's really not helpful right now. So I read the TWIO, I have the South Sound, I get that weekly. I know it's coming and going. And it's kind of the same message every year. In April we'll know a lot more about the bills that will actually have any impact on us. Because they'll caveat everything as necessary to implement budget, like you talked about NITB, but it's just like, it's not fruitful right now to spend, I think, a lot of our energy and time around the would-bes.
Was there anything that went out to us about the $30,000 that would be cut from the food budget? Did I miss something there?
Well, we haven't received any official word. It's kind of like, it's widely known now that granting money is gonna be off the table, and so we did have a 30,000, for the next year, I believe. So that would just be unbudgeted now.
Yeah, and it also goes to show, as someone that's involved in the local ag community pretty deeply, like that money, that's real money for farmers and nonprofits in this community. Like, it's such a clear line. Sometimes it's not as obvious in a larger setting with the economic, like, yeah, it's a bummer for our district and that those kids are not gonna have access to as much hyper-local food, which sounds like a very first world problem, yes and no. But it's also, it has an economic ripple, right? I'm assuming Matsuda in particular
Yeah, the
was
grant
counting on a lot of that money.
Yeah, the grant wasn't all for food. It was for, the underpinning structures, paying for some, people resource at Matsuda, those kind of things. So you're right, it's like, it's not just a hit to the district. It's not like now we have $30,000 less to buy lettuce.
Right.
That grant, paid for infrastructure.
Well, it is, and the community's talking about it. I think that goes to what we're saying is having some communication amongst the group so we're all on the same page as to how that is affecting the school before the community is buzzing too hard about it, because they are. I've probably been asked about it 5 times now, and I've been at home with a sick kid for most of it.
I just don't know, we don't, I haven't seen anything come from OSPI, and they're gonna be the ones who, that's where this grant comes through. And so when we get that information, then we can put it up, but maybe we can put a placeholder for that, since that's gonna be on people's minds.
Or maybe we could have some kind of response to the community as those things arise as a group, so we're staying united.
If you say that this is something that more likely than not will happen, but we don't have the official word yet. But, you know, we're concerned, I mean, we could say what we're saying here
I
and
mean,
be
I think we
accurate.
would have to, and maybe this is what you're asking for to some extent, is almost like some sort of our own rubric internally to what triggers a public something, you know, because you don't want to cause a fuss. I sound like a very old, you don't want to cause a fuss. Unnecessarily, you know,
Right.
if,
Right.
like,
If it gets fixed.
no one has said anything to me. I'm just saying that's my own, you know, granted, I'm rarely here anymore, but like, so it's hard to know, like, if we preemptively say something about something, does that cause more panic? Does that cause more uncertainty? Like, if we had our own sort of decision-making, you know, like yesterday, I reached out to Slade about the news about the Department of Ed essentially gutting 50% of their work staff. Now, to me, that's rose to the level, did I check in with everybody? Does this okay, you know, no, but he and I were on the same page.
Yeah, we were planning something for Friday, but Wednesday's, you know,
It's a
we
good day too.
Exactly.
So it's kind of hard to know, like, what is our threshold, and at what point do we have a voice, and at what point do we, you know?
Tap you on the shoulder.
Yeah,
Can I interject? I mean, because here, like, these are getting at a number of things, and these are some initial ideas here, which is, I do think things like the parent square piece that you sent out about the federal funding, right? That I think that the district is reassured when they feel like we're on top of it,
Right.
right? And that was very, it was just very matter of fact, right? And I guess I had a couple of thoughts, which is one, you know, when, a few minutes ago, you were talking about the state budget or state decisions. That's on a pretty predictable time frame, right? So we know, you know, so you're saying, okay, April, here's where we're gonna know more, here's this. And the rollout for those decisions is somewhat predictable in its timing, right? We know when a decision is made, it will likely be set in motion these months, right? Or at this point in time. Part of what, to me, is happening right now is that decisions are coming very rapidly and they're being implemented really quickly, not, hey, this is something that we've passed and it will be effective June 2025, you know, but more with the immediacy. So one of my thoughts was inserting at board meetings a time to potentially identify one area that's part of the national conversation and receive an update with time for questions. So for example, you know, you mentioned USDA, the other, English is being passed as an official language. People may not see the direct connections to the district, but it does have potential implications in terms of the districts for translation and other factors that affect families. And the other part I thought about was either having one forum or more than, you know, or a seasonal forum to have a community-wide, like a town hall, which have been quite robust around the country now, where we're looking at what the proposals kind of are, what the proposals that people see coming down the pike, because at the very least, most of them are being articulated. You know, being able to have a community conversation where we're hearing arguments for and against, implications for the districts, and in part, I say that because I want to make sure if we are in a position of having to make decisions, that I feel not just anecdotally in touch with the community pulse, but that I feel very directly, and because I also see a lot of these proposals as impacting historically and contemporarily marginalized communities, and that is a thread that runs throughout, and I want to make sure that impacted communities are getting a chance to voice things. So with the Department of Ed cuts, for example, you know, I know they're not saying immediately affecting, it won't immediately affect students with disabilities, et cetera, but there are byproduct ripple outs. So one of my questions is, can we set something up that's not reactive, that's thoughtful, that engages, that allows us to be in a shared conversation? Because I also think by that shared conversation, things like the USDA cuts, and the impact on local farmers, I think that's something this community would rally around. And I want to be able to
So-
creatively respond if needed.
So River, I have a question then. Are you proposing town halls?
Possibly even just one, to talk about unfolding initiatives potentially impacting the school district, because I see anxiety
Water.
across.
I don't have feelings about it one way or another.
Let me know if you get cold.
Yeah,
It
thank
gets
you.
cold here for you,
Thank you.
since we're in winter time.
And with that, maybe having a, you know, not people on the board representing, but maybe, you know, someone speaking to different areas.
I truly believe that, and I truly believe that this is more the purview of the Vashon and Maury Council than us. I'm just being honest. And that I would rather discuss things from a point of view of fact rather than a point of view of what ifs. Simply because the what ifs are rampant. I think it might, and here's just my sense of this, I think Parent Square site would be a place, a really good place to inform people whenever we know something that impacts the school. And to make that commitment to have it posted so that we're being very transparent when we know something, being very transparent that we are watching what's going on, because the questions I've been getting are very pointed, direct questions about things and saying, are you watching what's going on? Does the district have the information and are they getting any information? And as soon as I've been able to say, yes, we get it from this and this and this source, and we have contingencies, and federal, loss of federal money will not crash our budget, and we are looking at it very carefully, then that goes, it really lowers the anxiety. I'm afraid that a town hall would do just the opposite. That's just my opinion.
And I guess I also am concerned, there is a segment of the community who knows how to have their opinions made known. And when you're talking about marginalized folks, whether it be undocumented, poor, whatever the issue is, we know CPAC knows how to make their voices heard, right? But there are other groups who may in fact be the most at risk in our community who we will not hear from for a variety of reasons. And no one can carry that water for them. We can make guesses. We can talk to BYFS about low-income families. We can talk to Dove about gender-based violence, but hearing directly from people about their concerns tends to happen from people like me. I know how to make some noise. I know how to have my voice heard. And I guess I am aligned with what I understand Martha to be saying around speculation, because the flavor of what's happening now is full-blown chaos, decisions being made, and then they're walked back. Oops, didn't mean to
Right.
fire all the people in charge of the nuclear safety program. It feels like if we were to even speak on a speculative, this is what we're thinking about, and then all of a sudden the next day, what's her face in charge of education, just kidding, or, who knows? The chaos is both intentional and because I actually think they're incompetent.
And there are 10 to 20 injunctions right out there right now on various aspects. So I think maybe we're being premature on this talk, but I really think you're right, that the community wants to know that we are listening, and the community, we could encourage them, if they wanted to ask the board, where are the resources where I could find out information, even if we post it on, Parent Square and on the website, which we have, if we just say, if you want more information about X, Y, and Z, we can help point you to the place where you find out more about the schools. I read through all of Chris Reichdahl's stuff, even though I wasn't there for the webinar, and I assume that's public knowledge, correct?
It's all public.
Yeah, so I think what they want is reassurance that we're listening and that we care. I think that's really what
Yeah,
our public wants.
Maybe there is a place on the website for a tab for the national news related to education, or even, and I don't think there's a web page that, I find those, I don't read every single one, but the WASDA Daily Digest, I read some fascinating things in there, and it's not just all about the current crisis, there's some deep thinking about education that has been unbelievably helpful to me. I don't think they make that a static webpage that you can visit. I forwarded it to a couple of friends who were fascinated when I told them about how valuable I found those digests. But yeah, something simple on the webpage that either is, I think you can go looking for OSPI somewhere in here, but somewhere a little more obvious, because that stuff is so helpful and because they have a full staff of paid, smart people on the job.
We don't want to make extra work for our staff.
No.
Attaching a link is easy.
I guess, here's the, I have zero interest in raising community anxiety nor individual anxiety, and I think it's at an incredible high right now. And I don't have any interest in simply discussing hypotheticals, right? I don't think that that's productive nor constructive. I do think that there are things that might happen where we will be in a position to respond in one way or another. So let's say this $30,000 grant is gone. That means, as a board, we will have to respond to that, right? And whether we fund it in some other way or other pieces. And I guess what I want to know is that there is an opening for a conversation with the community, because I think that we have a lot of brilliant, talented, creative people out there in the community who, if they know that cut is coming, might be really motivated to be a part of a conversation. And some of these things, the immigration stuff has already been hitting and transpiring. So these aren't all hypothetical. Some of them are being lived. And so I'm trying to think of how to mediate between what you're saying, which I hear, and also the space for a productive conversation. And one of my thoughts is partnering then with the Chamber of Commerce, like you're saying, or Vashamari or someone else, having a space for these conversations. I guess what I don't want to do is make decisions in a siloed way. So I don't think the USDA thing is going to be the only thing that affects our budget, and then therefore our priority decisions moving forward for the coming year. And I want us to be able to look in a holistic way, and I don't want to be looking when we're having to react to an immediate moment.
Well,
So
let's hope.
that's my tension.
Yeah, let's hope the federal government doesn't drop some immediate thing at a time when we have to make a decision. They're part of
There'll be a
it.
lot of decisions to be made, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like,
exactly.
if they yank funding, maybe there's some chess that we have to, I had a very difficult conversation. I have a trans niece, and we ended up having a family conversation about safety planning. And we were talking about, like, what are the threshold markers at which decisions will have to be made about her safety and about their family's safety. And that to me was a useful exercise of, like, because there's the phenomenon of, like, the boiling the frog,
Mhm.
like that they turn the heat up and we just like, oh, expletive, now we're boiling. But that haphazard and chaotic way with which things are happening at this administration, A, it's hard to predict, and it doesn't feel like they're gonna boil a frog. It feels like, I don't know.
Feels like they're dangling the frog over the pot,
Yeah,
period.
and,
That's-
but is there,
that's
but like,
yeah.
are there, whether it's a threshold for which communication goes out, or a threshold at which decisions have to be made, like, I'm not sure. I don't even know at this point. It all feels, I mean, we've been in this for 50 days.
Yes.
Or at about the 50-day mark. So like what, is there, it was a thoughtful exercise to be like, okay, here are some, like for them, for example, the pride flag comes down. Or they're no longer allowed to have gender neutral bathrooms in their kids' bathroom. Like, these are little things that may not be so little, but cumulatively, it violates the safety of their kid. So are there things in our purview, recognizing what is your purview and what is our purview, that where we could imagine decisions have to be made, or we need to, I don't know.
Well, our purview is financial. Our purview is policy that affects our students academically, primarily. Our purview is also to reflect the community, but as you say, that's kind of dicey. In fact, it's hard to hear from all of the community, but I see it particularly as a board member in financial. And since I would much rather be on a school board in a public school at this moment than to be a dean at a university, because the cuts there, I mean, that's where the federal grants are really meeting, you know, that's already deeply affecting both private and public universities in many departments.
Well, and the cut to financial aid and
Yeah.
student loan stuff is affecting our seniors, looking
Yes, and they're
at
affecting the
schools and what
seniors
they
in what they can, for their
can
choices.
imagine.
But in the immediate role that we have as school board members, we are not beholden to the federal government, and we live in a very robust state with state laws that really respect and sanctify civil rights and students' rights. So at this point in our purview of what we have to do, I don't see yet anything that's come down the pipe that is really a financial issue.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Which is where I can see it coming back down the pike soon is that our job is also to align the budget with our priorities. And that, say we've got this $30,000 cut here, and say for some reason I think it was 1.4 million federal funding, that if we have a reduction in funding, we will have to make some, you know, pretty impactful decisions. And I suppose that's why I would like to know that we're engaged as a community in making those decisions. But I hear you in the push, and I
We
hear
have
you all, Jess.
we have also heard very clearly in the last survey from the staff, both instructional staff, classified, and across the board, what are the priorities in terms of academic support and curricular support that has come to the top with the budget committees. And I think the intent to try to honor that in a budget shortfall would be my number one goal as a school board member, to be really honest, because we already have data on what the community of stakeholders that know what they're talking about in terms of seeing what's going on in the schools. They've already spoken to us. And so one of my number one goals financially would be to try to honor that. And I do agree that being proactive is a lot more productive than reactive. And if we keep that sort of at our forefront and say, yes, we are going to try to continue to do what we have said we were going to do, continue to honor what we already know the school community wants in the face of possible budget cuts, that should be our goal. And at the time that there is significant financial impact, then we meet, I think that's the threshold. Where is there going to be a significant financial impact? If that happens, that's our threshold when we start really discussing the priorities, the educational priorities.
See, I consider that kind of reactive, and my big thing on this administration all along has been we have to be proactive, which is what I hear you saying. Would there be some type of way that we could add the hotter topics to our agenda for like a 20-minute portion of our session, so that the public knows that we are on top of that, it's brought up in the agenda in our board meetings?
Oh, I don't mind
That's-
that.
that's
As a compromise and a proactive.
That's our decision,
And I don't mind that a bit. I think that's a very good one.
I feel like that's a middle ground. We're
Yeah.
not holding a town hall. We're
And
not trying to change the world, but we are letting the public know we see these topics. This is where the city, the state, the district is standing on these topics in each meeting, and that should calm and quelch a little bit, perhaps.
That's what I had,
do you
I mean,
feel like
that's
it
what I
should
was
sit in
proposing.
the
Okay,
superintendent's?
That's what I said earlier, was in
Yeah.
each meeting.
I thought that was where you're going, just
Okay.
trying to redirect.
Sorry, River.
So,
I
well,
got-
which would
I got-
update, would provide an update and.
I got
also
waylaid
ask questions.
into what is a threshold, and that's where I was at. No,
Where
I
would you
think
like
it's
that to
fine.
sit? Would you like that to sit, and mostly I'm talking with the two of you, I'm ambivalent. Do you want it to sit in the superintendent's report? Do you want it to sit as a standalone section that a board member addresses? Do you-
Well, I guess
what
it's
would-
you. Would you like to address those
Or do you
topics, or
want
would you
us
like
to?
us to address it?
We're a team on that one probably, it's probably not me. So it could be either or. It could be,
Okay.
it could be, you know, we have the discussion section, which is typically,
That's exactly what I was thinking.
you know, it's typically first read, but it's not limited to first reads. Yeah. So we
I
can have
would be
discussions.
fine with
Yeah, let's
that.
put it in there. That sounds great. As a standing item, I think that's a great idea. As with all things, we can always say
If
nothing.
it causes chaos, we can stop it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
No, I don't
Yeah.
think that, that was not the intent of
No.
my previous.
No, but I can see that we also don't want to add any gasoline to this fire in any way, shape,
Yeah.
or form as we move forward, because it is becoming a thing.
And I guess to me, I think that is a part also of having the embodied experience of, we are holding this, right? We are holding this, we are attuned to it, and that's an embodied expression. And it allows an opportunity for an update and potentially questions, which I think is helpful.
Can I ask a decision-making question, and if you don't have an answer, it's fine. And this may be better directed to someone like Dr. Spencer. Is there, as we were advised by Chris Rekdal, as people are, like, if you've got a grant application, it's kind of in the works, and those are not an insignificant amount of work, just the application, they're huge, huge lifts for so many people on your team. Is there your own rubric or gut check or somewhere in the middle of like, I think you should, let's not, this is not worth your time right now? Or is it feel like we still gotta apply for everything, because you never know? Like, are there things in the works that feel like, oh shoot, this is probably not gonna happen?
I don't think so. Some of the, like we have transitional bilingual grants that is super small, but you know, that's kind of one, you know, a question mark. But that's again, a state grant, so you don't know as the state pinches where you're gonna get pinched. So, you have Title II, which is professional development. That's not so much, you know, then you just kind of stop doing some things, if that's where your priorities are. you know, if you're gonna identify, we're gonna wanna keep, you know, services for multi-level supports higher, you know, at the sacrifice of, you know, insert PDD, you know, something like that, so I think those are still fairly, small numbers, but not insignificant, because we're small. So I think Stephanie is taking it, I think Stephanie's just applying, you know, because it's part of our just annual process of, those are, you know, like our lap money, you know, which is our tier 3 service, tier 2 services. Absolutely, we're gonna apply for that, you know, and we'll see what happens.
I know we're over time, so.
Thank you, River, for bringing this up. This is an important matter that we need to discuss.
But what I can do is like, go to Stephanie and have some information and bring that back to that discussion time.
Sure.
Right, that would be
Yeah,
helpful.
that would be great. If it's not too much work. Like, I don't ever want reporting to the board if it, like, to become
It's just information.
a level of, yeah, I know, but I know she particularly, I know she has a certain expectation for herself about the way she likes to bring us information, and it's super high.
I'm not gonna invite her to share.
No, okay.
And I have a post-cough, everybody, and I had my shingles vaccine yesterday. At the
Oh,
afternoon.
no.
So I'm just letting you know, I'm kind of a little lower energy,
Oh,
but
dude,
with still a good sense of humor. So
yikes.
just-
I've been hiding from the second one. 'cause
I've been
it
hiding
laid
from the
me out.
single shot.
It's been,
From
late.
the
You haven't
first
even had one?
I haven't had
It's-
it.
Martha!
It's weird to have
It's
like
the
the
order.
flu, but you
It's
don't have
the-
the flu.
It's the only shot I haven't had.
It could,
I know.
oh my gosh, I didn't think I'd have to use my mom voice with you. Martha.
I keep,
Well, I had the mommy's voice used on me, and that's why I went and got it.
yeah,
Because I was like, and then, you know, you have to.
yeah, I know I have.
Well, you're around kids all day,
Yeah, it's just,
and you're in the elementary school where all of the kids
I had shingles
generally
when I
get
was
their
pregnant.
chickenpox.
I had a very mild, I didn't even know what it was. I thought it was bed bugs. I was like, what is
Right.
all over me?
right, I can see why you think that.
Yeah, and
I
I
had bed bugs
stayed
when
at
I-
my brother's place. Gross.
You're still on camera.
Yeah, you are being
He lives in
recorded.
Texas. He'll never hear this. He would probably agree. He was a little gross at that time in his life.
Okay, well, are we going to move,
Shifting gears.
shifting gears here?
Okay. Is that was it, right, for the work session?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's more, but I think we can move.
There's always
There's
more work.
always more. So do we stop
Are we
recording
off?
Do
now?
you have to
To
adjourn?
adjourn.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was like,
And at 7:46, we adjourn the work session public section of this meeting.
6:46.
6:46 is actually the number on the analog clock.
And we're scheduled to end at 8:30. So we say that publicly.
We're going to adjourn the public part of this meeting for an executive session? Yes, an executive session until 8:15,
8:15.
per the public announcement.
And we'll not be starting the stream again.
We will not be starting the stream again, it's true. This is all you're gonna hear from us. Thank you for coming, and good night.
That's perfect.
I feel like we have to have you watch some late night shows to get signed.
I was just thinking.
I was just thinking of Walter Cronkite.